third month of separation from the financier. He bumped into me on the streets of Europe and came out of the hospital with my pregnant belly. Ambition is not small, but it is too stupid. The man commented coldly. He asked his assistant to bring me a message, threw me a card, and ordered me to abort the child. Mike will not be manipulated by a child, and Mike's family will not open its door to you because of a wild species. I hope you will keep to yourself and not think about anything else. I declined the card and smiled. You misunderstood. This is my husband and my husband's child. We got married 2 months ago and have nothing to do with Mike. Winter in London is always cold, and the wind on the streets blows for no reason, making people's faces hurt a little. Tom in front of me listened to my words, and the expression on his face did not change, and he only said with a slightly surprised expression, "Really?" He stayed by Mike's side for a long time, and his ability to read words and expressions grew day by day. The eyes behind the lenses swept over my lower abdomen and asked respectfully, "Lily, how many weeks is this pregnant?" "About 12 weeks. He nodded slightly, still with a gentle and distant smile on his face. "Then it's a bit too coincidental with the time you left Mike." As Mike's most trusted assistant, he's seen too many women who will stop at nothing to stay by Mike's side. I lowered my head and pulled out my phone. Here are my wedding photos with my husband. But he politely interrupted me. This doesn't prove it. Mike is very taboo about illegitimate children. I hope Lily knows it in his heart. Otherwise, Mike wouldn't mind having you lie on the operating table a second time. My fingertips stiffened while holding my phone, and I raised my eyes slightly. The first snow of the year slowly fell. I crashed into the floor-to-ceiling window of a high-rise building, and the man's dark and cold eyes looked at him. He was looking at me condescendingly, perhaps waiting for me to be caught again, his face pale and embarrassed. He is used to being in control, and my pregnancy is undoubtedly another challenge to his bottom line. I put my phone back, let out a deep breath, and turned to tell Tom, "Please tell Mike, I won't make the same mistake again." I said in a gentle tone, "I don't have any obsession with the child I once abandoned, let alone any mother who relies on her son to compete for family property. It's true, it's just my husband's and my child. I used to do pregnant with Mike's child. It was my 6th year with him. A little life connected to my blood took root in my stomach and miraculously ignited my passion for life. When I was 17 years old, I left my hometown to pay off my father's gambling debts and worked as a wine companion in a drunken nightclub for several years, with ups and downs all the way, with no relatives or friends around me. That was the first time I was so bold and hid Mike with the intention of keeping it. Until a drinking party, when I blocked the wine for him, I vomited back and forth several times. A woman brought by a vice president joked that I was pregnant. I could clearly see Mike's eyebrows furrowing imperceptibly, his sharp, scrutinizing gaze on my lower abdomen. He didn't allow any accidents in his life, and this sudden child stepped on almost all his thunder points. What's more, I hid it from him for so long. That was the first time he got angry with me, gritted his teeth, and said mockingly, "I underestimated you. Lily, you are quite capable." He threw me out of the villa with a cold face and said, "I'll give you a night to reflect. If you still can't recognize your identity, then pack up your things and get out of here." It happened to snow that night. The biting cold wind blew on my face, and I looked at the white expanse in the distance, touched my slightly bulging abdomen, and exhaled very lightly with red eyes. It's a good thing that the tense nerves of 3 months have finally relaxed. I pretended to be relaxed. I may be the only one of so many of his little lovers who didn't get the breakup fee and made him angry. At that time, the fetus had developed to 12 weeks, and if the abortion was forcibly carried out, it could cause a tear in the cervix. In addition, I drink all year round, and my physique is too weak. The doctor said that if I had an abortion, I might never have another child in my life. But the man just extinguished the smoke. His dark eyes were calm, and he replied softly, "What does this have to do with me? It is not difficult to raise an illegitimate child in the circle." Even his group of brothers with higher eyes half-truthfully persuaded them that it would be enough to send them abroad to raise them after they were born. After all, you are in your 30s, and she is the only one around you all these years, so it is a good thing to have a child. Mike didn't speak. Later, I drank 3 rounds. Someone got drunk and joked, "No, Mike, you have left people by your side for so many years. Dare you say that you have never been sincere?" Some people tempted. Could it be that you are still thinking about Sarah? For this white moonlight, who had not been heard from since he went abroad when he was young, Mike just glanced coldly. It has nothing to do with her. When he encountered my question again, he replied casually, "It's just pleasing to the eye. Just keep it for a few more years." A low-level wine escort is only suitable for being a lover, not a wife. He would not want such a lowly child. I was very well behaved from beginning to end, and I didn't shed a single tear on the day I went to the hospital. Later, due to heavy bleeding, his life hung by a thread on the operating table. I stayed in the ICU for several weeks before I made it through. On the day I was discharged from the hospital, he had a rare meeting to see me. The man was wearing a wide black trench coat, his eyes were cold, and he said as clearly as possible, "Lily, I can't marry you. I will only have a legitimate heir, not an illegitimate son who can't be on the table." I slowly pursed my pale lips and chuckled at him. I know. What he likes most is me. Interesting, sensible, and obedient enough. The snow outside was falling, and the howling cold wind hit the tight glass windows. From 17 to 27 years old, I suddenly realized that this was the 10th year I had seen snow in Kyoto. A woman's best years are also here. Probably because I had a good attitude of admitting my mistake, and after such a time in the gate of hell, he didn't care about it anymore. The heating was on in the private ward, and the man's cold eyebrows gradually relaxed, and he took the apple next to him and peeled it up. I asked my assistant to pick out some bags and jewelry for you, and send them to you after a while. I quietly stared at the circles of apple peels. My sour eyes were filled with water, and I tried to hold it back again. The man's long eyelashes were still stained with some snow. His expression was cold and serious, and his movements were meticulous. "You have been with me for the past few years, and when I get married, I will naturally let you go." He handed the apple slice to my lips and lowered his voice to coax, "Lily, be good, I won't treat you badly, huh?" He really didn't treat me badly. The 10 years I followed him were indeed the most beautiful and proud moments of my life. Even at the end, Sarah appears. He didn't embarrass me at all. I patted the snow on the shoulder and told Tom to reassure Mike, I'll do a prenatal paternity test in 2 days. Then please let Lily know when the time comes, and I will accompany you. He was obviously afraid that I would fool him with fake results. I nodded, yes. He smiled and handed over his business card, and didn't forget to knock on it. Lily can contact me if you have anything. Mike is ready to get married, and please Lily be more proportionate. The new lady is very concerned about this. In fact, don't worry, before leaving, I had deleted all Mike's contact information, changed my phone number and private WeChat, and even sold the address he arranged. If it weren't for the accidental encounter on the street today, I don't think we'll ever be in touch for the rest of our lives. And the new lady is probably his white moonlight who has just returned to China. I laughed and nodded. Then I wished Mike a happy marriage. The snow on the edge of the sky fell one after another. I buried my face in my scarf, turned around, and walked alone along the snowy street in the direction of home. The dark, cold gaze of the high-rise building always followed me. On a snowy night many years ago, when he walked down the street with a drunken me, he made it clear that he would only marry. Any relationship that does not produce real value is only a stage consumable. He demanded that the family be matched and the class should be adapted to maximize the interests. He raised me, but it was just a clearly priced transaction. I sank while I was awake. But it wasn't until today that I suddenly realized. The principal is set up for us to be such a stand-in, and the white moonlight is outside the principal. Even if she has nothing, she will get his preference. No one knows why this white moonlight, who had left other countries when he was young and had no news, suddenly appeared. But I know. I had an absurd dream. In the dream, she was a raider, and after brushing up Mike's love points, she returned to the original world. She got married and had a child there, but because of her difficult life and her husband's cheating, she chose to return to Mike's side, to verify whether Mike still loves her or not. Before I left, she indicated that she wanted to see me. In the cafe, the woman was wearing a white dress, without makeup, and looked at my outfit and appearance calmly. Although she tried her best to rely on her pure and clean appearance when she was young, the fatigue and calculation in her eyes were not to be faked. On the other hand, I am well nourished by money, and my whole body is full of lazy and quiet temperament that does not have to worry about making a living. This caused her to have some inexplicable resentment. She only asked me 3 questions. How long have you been together, or how long have you been with him? I held a coffee cup and said slowly but clearly, 9 years and 6 months. In my 7th year with Mike, we had more than half a year of disconnection. Some people say that he's going to get married, and some people say that he has found a more similar stand-in. Just when I thought the relationship was going to be cut in 2, Tom contacted me out of the blue one day. After a hearty lingering, he acquiesced to me taking the most important position next to him, and I was the only one left by his side. The woman in front of her looked a little unhappy. She didn't want to hear such a clear timeline, but he still tried to raise his lower lip and pretended not to care. It's been so long? Then did you do it? This is her second question. I was stunned. She also quickly reacted. This question was a bit ridiculous. After all, it's 10 years, and Mike is a normal man. It is impossible to be without desire. But I don't mind telling her something she wants to hear. In the first 5 years, no. Mike had indeed waited for her. She exhaled relievedly, as if she had finally found her weight in Mike's heart, and her smile was a little more sincere, and she said angrily, well, that's because I'm back too late. She then asked the last question. Then do you kiss when you do it? Kisses and caresses should be exclusive to the lover. She especially needed this to prove it. In the stagnant air, she stared closely at the change in expression on my face. I was in a trance for a moment, and I replied quickly, no. Her tense fingertips relaxed, and all tension and worry immediately faded away like a tide. Instead, it is the frivolity and self-satisfaction of a winner. Okay, then I know. You've worked hard to take care of Mike all these years. She finally raised her generous smile and showed the posture of a righteous master, with some affectionate complaints in her tone. He has a cold personality and doesn't care much about people, but he has made you suffer a lot of grievances. I didn't deny it and said a soft because I had already imagined this day. I didn't have much emotional ups and downs. I saw too many infatuated girls in the night scene, and I thought that if I stayed with them long enough, I would be able to become a regular. But in the end, I ended up with a torn face, and I was warned by the real wife. I think I'm lucky enough to be a stand-in who doesn't see the light. But I lied to her a little. Mike didn't resist kissing. Especially those emotions that can be solved with a kiss. He will not waste time and money thinking about them. Occasionally, when he was sleepy, he would hug me and peck me casually. In fact, it can't be said that there is much to be desired. But this brings a little warmth. It always gives me the illusion that he and I are just a normal couple. You see, women are always moved by these ordinary little things, and finally they are willing to fall into it. Even I am not exempt from the vulgarity. Winter nights always come quickly. When I got home, my nanny, Jane, mysteriously brought me a small plate of black truffle mushroom pasta. She said it was her new attempt and looked forward to my approval. I was stunned for a moment, smiled after a while, and apologetically pushed away. I don't like pasta. Her husband, Jack, traveled to other countries for further study. He was afraid that I wouldn't be able to take care of himself, so he hired me a nanny to cook. Jane was a little ashamed because she couldn't figure out my taste, and said she would make me something else. In the silent living room, the bright moon hangs high outside the window. The clear and mellow aroma of black truffles filled the air, trying to bring my memories back to the past. At that time, I was young and vigorous, always day and night. When I am exhausted, I am always hungry. That was the first time I stayed at his house. A big villa, but there is no fast food stocked. In the early years, I spent all my time on how to please my boss and get more tips. Dinner is just a casual couple of bites. He can't cook, let alone use the kitchen utensils in his kitchen. I could only rummage out the bread from the cupboard and hide on the sofa to nibble on it. Maybe Mike was in a good mood that night, and he looked at my pitiful hunger and turned around and went to the kitchen. I waited a little sleepy. When I opened my eyes in a daze, I only saw the dim light and shadow of the living room. The noble and lazy man was wearing the same style of loungewear as me, walking towards me step by step in the light and shadow, his slender and good-looking fingers pushing the pasta over, and his voice was frivolous. Taste. Many times later, every time I saw a black truffle, I would think of that bowl of noodles. These little things dragged me into that gentle and heartless net again and again. I clenched my palms. If you want to completely strip yourself off, you can't touch anything related to memory. On Monday, I took a sample of my husband Jack's hair, packed it in a sealed clear bag, and stuffed it into my handbag. When I came to the hospital, I saw not only Tom, but also Sarah. Compared with the simplicity of that day, she is much more noble now. Holding the latest luxury bag in her hand, the heavy makeup smoothed out the blemishes on her face, and even the fatigue under her eyes was swept away. Money is indeed the most nourishing tonic for women. My steps paused slightly, and I nodded slightly. Sarah. She didn't respond. The arrogance and displeasure on her face could hardly be hidden, and she just looked back and forth at my lower abdomen like that. The atmosphere is subtle. Tom said respectfully, "Our lady is not at ease. Come and take a look. If Lily has no ghost in her heart, then she probably won't mind." I clenched my fingertips and smiled, of course. Madam has also prepared a sample of Mike's hair, and the two of them will be more credible if they are tested together. He was very thoughtful, I had no objection, and handed over the transparent bag. When I came out of the hospital after the blood draw, it was snowing and sunny outside. The harsh sunlight reflects off the understated luxury of the black sedan. The man leaned against the car door, his profile was cold, and his slender fingertips lit a cigarette, as if he was waiting for someone, and his eyebrows and eyes were already a little impatient. After 3 months, he hasn't changed much, and I have completed the most important thing in my life. I wanted to leave quietly. But the next moment, the man's eyelids lifted and his eyes were fixed on me. The people around him came and went, but they automatically gave up a circle for this noble and indifferent big man. I had to force myself to meet his gaze and smiled politely. "Mike, what a coincidence." "It's not a coincidence." He lowered his eyes, his mocking gaze sweeping over my slightly bulging abdomen. "It seems that the lesson from last time was not deep enough to make you feel that you can do it again with the same means." I want to explain. "No, you misunderstood." He interrupted me. "Misunderstanding." As if he had heard some clumsy joke, he mocked and repeated these 2 words. "You have taken all the time and motive. You told me it was a misunderstanding?" The man threw away the cigarette, but stepped on the cold ground with his leather shoes and approached me step by step. 3 months after leaving me, you happen to be 12 weeks pregnant? Tell me, which man is so capable that you can throw yourself into a new life so quickly and can't even wait to conceive a child? The extremely mean words and reasonable inferences left me speechless for a while. "Lily, you've been with me for 10 years. You should learn to be smarter. Don't use such stupid means, and don't force me to exhaust the last bit of love." The man judged me condescendingly, and every word was as cold as a knife. He is always like this, arrogant, confident, and uses his own logic to guess everything. The arrival of this child once again stepped on his minefield. The restless sun can't melt half the cold. I let out a deep breath, not wanting to explain in vain. I looked up and looked at him so calmly and seriously for the first time, without politely addressing him as Mike. "Mike," my voice was soft, but clear enough. "Do you really think that I really have no other choice in life except you? Finding a suitable person to marry and have a lovely child is a plan in my life itself, not to mention that the report has not yet come out. Why should I be condemned now?" My eyes were filled with mist, and I asked in a soft and persistent tone, "Why don't you believe me, Mike?" He stared at me silently, and the coldness in his eyes did not diminish at all, until tears slipped from the corners of my eyes and dripped onto his expensive handmade leather shoes. The long fingers on his side moved unconsciously, pursed his lips, and looked away. The trick of showing weakness has always worked for him. I am well aware of my strengths. He took a step back in silence and distanced himself from me. After a while, his eyes were cold and his words were warned. "Lily, you'd better be sure that what you said is true. Of course, if the report comes out in a week, Mike will definitely get a satisfactory answer." The man stared at my back, and his cold gaze became a little complicated and difficult to distinguish. "A satisfactory answer?" A strange emotion suddenly rose in his chest. Is it his? Or is it not his? A bit of unknown bipolar disorder wrapped around my heart. He suddenly realized. It seemed that no matter what the answer was, he was not satisfied. 9. Everyone felt that I had to rely on my children to get on top. But in fact, I don't have that much ambition for fame and fortune. In the early years, my only thought was probably how I could stay by Mike's side for a longer time. People always like to use light as a metaphor for redemption and love. So when I was in my 20s, I like to compare Mike to my light, the only salvation in my debauched and rotten life. I even despicably wanted to squeeze out all the female companions around him and become the only one by his side. You might think I'm ridiculous, but you have to know, the year I met him, I just turned 20. He paid off my father's gambling debts for me, solved the debt collectors who scared me all day long, and gave me the opportunity to continue going to college. I think that no matter who it is, in such a situation, it will probably sink hopelessly. So I willingly stayed with him after graduation, accompany him to various liquor bureaus to discuss cooperation, and help him block glass after glass of spirits. He doesn't really like to drink. Except for the occasion where you have to drink, I don't touch anything else, and I will do it all. At that time, I always hoped that I could stay by his side for a few more years. So every time the wine burned through my throat, I didn't say a word, and I would smile sweetly at him. I would blush when I received his approving gaze, and my heart would beat faster because I could lean on his shoulder with drunkenness. He has always had a lot of female companions around him. Some are needed to attend banquets, and some are arranged by the family. But most of them do not exceed 3 months. I relied on the skill of drinking and stayed by his side year after year. The longer you stay with him, the more I understand the gap between myself and him. He can't marry me. He used to say this sentence often. I knew without him later. Since you have chosen a shortcut, don't blame the thorns all over it. The class divide is like a natural moat. I am well aware of this. Therefore, he was never my chosen marriage partner. The day the results came out was Friday, and I arrived at the hospital as scheduled. Tom received the report and took me to a nearby restaurant. Sarah had been waiting there for a long time, looking particularly calm. As I was about to open the report, Tom held my wrist with a distant and polite smile on his face. Since Lily is confident in this result, why don't we let our wife announce it? I vaguely sensed that something was wrong. Sarah smiled at the corners of her mouth, as if she had already seen through everything, and now she was just here to collect the answer. She opened the report and glanced at it, then threw Mike's copy on the table. Explain, Lily. Mike hates it when people lie to him, especially about children. My gaze fell, and the big letters on it clearly said, 99.99% confirmed the parent-child relationship. At the sight of this absurd conclusion, my heart inevitably shrank. Tom consciously withdrew, leaving the space for the two of us. I was stunned for a moment, picked up the report, and read it back and forth several times. Seeing this, Sarah was complacent and sarcastically said, Lily doesn't speak. Is she thinking about how to make up lies? You want to squeeze into the upper echelons? I can understand, but Mike and I are getting married. Who are you trying to disgust by creating an illegitimate child? I quickly figured it out. No wonder I am so sure of the result. It turns out that he has already done something about it. Maybe I look too well behaved and younger than her, which makes her feel easy. But I wasn't in vain during those years at the night scene. Later, I followed Mike to so many drinking parties, and I heard a lot of dirty things about superiors. The samples of the day were all through her and Tom's hands. Fools can see that something is wrong. I threw the report in front of her and said with pity, "Sarah, you are really afraid of me." The smile on her face froze. I approached her and chuckled. "You know this kid isn't Mike's, but you're just going to sit it down, right?" Her eyes widened in astonishment, and she was about to refute, but was blocked by my next sentence. "Didn't you go to great lengths to get Mike to see the ironclad evidence with his own eyes? I want him to firmly believe that I, Lily, am a woman who has not changed her life and tries to entangle him with wild seeds, so that his remaining little bit of old feelings and guilt for me will completely turn into disgust and anger." Her face instantly turned blue, and her voice rose high. "What nonsense are you talking about? What trouble did I have?" The arc of my lips widened more and more, and I continued to expose her self-concealed thoughts. "You want him to push me away with his own hands, so that he can never have trouble in the future. Because you know better than anyone how taboo Mike is about illegitimate children and how much he values blood, so you gave him the most unforgivable reason." Yes, her biggest fear is not the child, but Mike's uncertain old love. She had to kill this Mars with her own hands. 10 years, that's 5 times more than the 2 years she saved Mike. How could she not be afraid? She stood up suddenly, slapped the report on the table, and broke the jar and said, "Now this is the truth. I have sent the report to him. Mike will only believe this now, even if you say it. He will only think that you are lying and lying to him." I laughed out loud, sat down on the sofa, and asked, "You feel like you have a lot of weight in his heart, don't you?" "That's 10 years, Sarah." The more scared she became, the more I wanted to poke her in the heart. "It's 10 years that you can't erase no matter what." She was completely irritated by me. Every word seemed to be squeezed out of between her teeth, and she emphasized sharply, "Lily, you are the one who is not loved, understand? What about 10 years? If I hadn't left, how could Mike have a turn to serve someone like you who came out of the nightclub? Are the men you have accompanied counted? Let you take the blessing that Mrs. Mike can enjoy for 10 years and pretend to be a superior person for a long time. Have you really forgotten who you are?" I was non-committal, tilted my head and smiled. "Why, Sarah is jealous." She sneered. "Jealousy? Huh, what am I jealous of? He's just a plaything for fun. Oh, by the way, weren't you pregnant with Mike's baby back then? Do you think he wants it?" And now this. She stretched out her hand suddenly, almost poking my stomach, with extreme malice and mockery on her face. "What do you think will be different? Let me tell you, even if this is really Mike's seed, he is born an illegitimate child. Will be like you, and will be poked and scolded in the spine for the rest of your life. It's a small wild species that is born of cheap goods." My face finally turned completely cold. I got up suddenly, picked up the coffee at hand, and splashed it on her face. 11. That's when Mike came in. He walked in and saw Sarah with a coffee-stained face, embarrassed and shivering and crying. He didn't even need a second to judge. The man's face was calm and cold, but his eyes were dark and sharp, and he took a whole glass of ice water from the table and fell down from the top of my head impartially. The whole process is crisp and neat, without hesitation. "Have you made enough trouble?" His voice did not fluctuate at all, but his tone was cold to the bone. The ice water slipped from the top of the head to the side of the face and flowed into the collar. The biting cold made me tremble and tremble. I closed my eyes and remembered the first year I was with him. There have also been such scenes. He took me to talk about the Cooperative Wine Bureau for the first time. I was so nervous that I accidentally got the cuff of a president's shirt wet while pouring wine. He got up indifferently, poured the whole bottle of wine over my head in front of the whole table. In the same flat tone, he rebuked me. "Are you dumb? Don't apologize to Sam. But it's not the same as it was 10 years ago." At this moment, I didn't have any unwillingness or resentment. I just thought it was funny. It was so funny that it was sarcastic, and the tears in the corners of the eyes almost fell. I tried my best to hold back my sour and red eyes and met his condescending gaze. I spoke in a dumb voice, my voice trembling word by word, stating the facts without any emotion. "Mike, I don't have anything to say to you, never. For 10 years, I have obeyed you, and I drank when you asked me to stop the wine. Even if I drank until I had stomach bleeding and went to the hospital, I never refused. I will go to whoever you ask me to please. Even if he puts his hands on me and takes advantage of me, I have never resisted. If you ask me to abort the child, I will beat it. Even if I die on the operating table, I will not hesitate at all. Am I not obedient enough?" "Mike." My eyes were red and I asked, "But why do you do this to me?" His eyes sank and he said nothing. I laughed with difficulty, and tears rolled down from the corners of my eyes. "I have always been very well behaved. I have never caused you any trouble, and when I broke up, I was simply neat. I didn't ask you for any compensation. I didn't give myself any possibility to contact you, and I even sincerely hope that you can live a happy life." I choked up so much that I couldn't speak for a while, but I stared at him almost stubbornly, eager for an answer, and asked, "But why do you do this to me?" "Mike." I have rarely cried in front of him over the years, very rarely. The man's dark pupils stared at me, and his Adam's apple rolled down very lightly. Hot tears welled up from the corners of my eyes and fell to the ground. It seemed to hit his heart, making the tip of his heart tremble. His fingers hanging at his side clenched unconsciously. It was so neat when he picked up the ice water just now, but at this time it was like 1,000 pounds, and it was difficult to even lift it. He has experienced countless meetings that determine the life and death of the company, but for the first time when he didn't know how to speak, his cold eyes stared at my tears, and he couldn't get rid of them for a long time. His silence finally broke the last trace of my reason. I couldn't control my broken emotions anymore. Why are you disturbing my life? Why do you make subjective assumptions that this child must be yours? Why do you have to force me to the point where I can't prove myself?" He suddenly said, "Because we did it that night." Sarah next to her covered her face full of disbelief. She probably wouldn't have thought of it. On the night her flight landed, and Mike's body is still lingering with me. Her face turned pale instantly, and she rushed over to ask Mike what was going on. But Mike throws it away in disgust. 12. I suddenly laughed, laughing and crying. "Is it just for this reason? Mike, when are we not going to do it? You have worn a condom only a handful of times, and you have been like this over the years. How can you think that one time will allow me to conceive a child?" His jawline was tense, his eyes were cold, and he threw the report at hand. "This is my child." "It's not," I shouted. In the deserted restaurant, we confronted each other quietly. The air was depressed to the extreme. I was the first to calm down. Mike, didn't the doctor tell you that after aborting that child, it will be difficult for me to have another child? His face was extremely cold, but you are really pregnant now. That's because my husband is a doctor. I interrupted him, his eyes completely red. Mike, I take birth control pills every time I finish it, and that time was no exception. You wouldn't allow an illegitimate child to appear, would you? But Mike, what are you doing now? These questions seemed to give him a heavy blow to his reason. Oh yes. What is he doing? In a cafe full of chaos. I just looked at him with my soaked hair and called his name. Mike, I begged you, okay? He could see all the emotions in my eyes clearly, so clear that it made his heart palpitate. But this plea is not asking him to believe me. I said, Mike, let me go. These words fell into his ears. His heart seemed to be suddenly pulled. An unprovoked sourness spread from his heart. 12. Winter in London is really cold. The soaked clothes were attached to the body, as if the people's internal organs were shivering from the cold. I covered my expensive black coat, couldn't hold back a few sneezes, and walked faster. It's not far from my home. And today is exactly the time my husband Jack's flight landed. The person who has been gone for half a month is finally coming back. I touched my lower abdomen and exhaled deeply. The baby in the belly has always been well behaved. Even though I was so emotional just now, it never made a fuss. I regret it as I think about it. I was still too kind just now. Even the cup of coffee that Sarah poured was lukewarm, and it was only aimed at the face. But that glass of ice water soaked me from head to toe. It's so unfair. Mike followed me a short distance behind me, silent but persistent. Originally, he said he wanted to drive me, but I refused. You might as well check if the test sample has been swapped. This matter is handled by Tom and Sarah. I also need an explanation. With his power and wealth, this is not a problem at all. I'm sure it's my baby and my husband Jack. He didn't say a word, just stared at my pregnant belly. In fact, there is only a slight raised curvature now, which is not obvious. But he still felt that it was extremely dazzling, which made people feel strong displeasure and resistance in their hearts. And this feeling is even more obvious than when I was pregnant. He had actually vaguely foreseen the test results, because I had no reason to lie, but he resisted thinking and accepting it. The man's eyes fell on the plain ring on my ring finger. I stared at it for a long, long time until my eyes were red. When he spoke again, his voice was a little hoarse. You bought the ring yourself, right? Abroad, single men and women often buy rings to wear by themselves in order to reduce the conversation between others. His question itself has the meaning of self-deception and fighting with his back against the wall. Obviously, such an obvious answer was in front of him. He still wanted me to nod. It seems that as long as I nod, then everything that happened in the past 3 months can disappear and be written off. I am still the Lily who has been with him for 10 long years, and I will never leave his Lily as long as he doesn't say separate. Even the child in the belly. It can also be used as a gift for the night we left and had sex for the last time. He thought he didn't mind raising an illegitimate child. But I just smiled and said, almost cruelly, it was my husband Jack who made the draft himself and took a month to design. Mike, we're a good match, we're very loving, and we're about to have a baby of our own. That humble hope was completely extinguished. He laughed self-deprecatingly, not knowing what to say for a while, and his eyes turned red for no reason when he lowered his head. It's only 3 months, it's only 3 months. Why doesn't God want to give him a little time to react? 13. There are 2 rows of footprints in the snow, 1 foot deep and 1 foot shallow. When I arrived at the door, I took off my coat and threw it into the trash can in front of the man behind me. I'm sure he doesn't lack a coat, and he doesn't have to contact each other. He had thrown such a coat worth tens of thousands of dollars before. That night was also such a snowy night. Because my partner was a little difficult to talk to that night, I was drunk too much, pulled by the collar of his coat, and vomited on him. Probably because after the cooperation was negotiated, he was in a good mood, so he threw away the dirty expensive coat and simply picked me up. I forgot whether I was drunk that night. I only remember that the moon was very round that night, his heart was very steady, and the snow fell on his slender eyelashes, which was so beautiful that people couldn't take their eyes off. The snow that night was really cold. I rubbed his warm chest in a daze, greedily hoping that the road would be longer. At the same time, I am very clear. The temperature in winter is certainly nostalgic, but you can't be willing to be trapped all winter because of this attachment. As I was about to leave, the man behind me suddenly stopped me. His eyes were silently red, and his voice was hoarse and astringent when he spoke, and his expression was in a trance. Would it be if I had been willing to keep that child in the first place? I interrupted him. I don't want to. I said slowly and seriously, word by word, Mike, I will only have a normal family and raise a child that belongs to me and my lover, not an illegitimate child who is looked down upon and cannot be on the stage. I never thought that child could stay, never. His heart was pierced hard, and the bloody pain spread to his limbs. Tears suddenly fell from his sour eyes. He obviously didn't feel anything about that child before. Why do I feel that it is difficult to breathe and my heart hurts just thinking about it now? The results of the report came later. The child in my belly is indeed not his. Sarah hasn't been seen since that night. I know that the system judged that her mission to reunite after a long absence failed and sent her back to the original world. After experiencing such a luxury and prosperity, how could she be willing to endure a mediocre and carefree husband and a poor life? The great mental torture kept her on the verge of collapse all day long. And Tom, who collected money to do things, was also quickly fired, and no company dared to hire him again. Even though he had been with Mike for so many years, Mike had never relented. He has always been such a cold-blooded and ruthless person. At the end of the winter day, Mike came to see me for the last time. He set the location at the same restaurant last time and was about to pour me wine, but I reached out to block it. It's fruit wine, the alcohol is not high, and it won't affect the child in your belly. He stared at me, his voice very astringent for no reason. I pursed my lips and smiled softly, telling him for the first time so frankly, Mike, I don't like drinking. Never liked to drink. It was life that forced me to go down the road of drinking. He was stunned for a while, as if he had finally heard this fact. Even if it's been 10 years together. He didn't know that in fact, I, like him, didn't like to drink. After eating, he still insisted on taking me home. The moment I was about to walk into the house, he stopped me in the snow. Lily, have you ever loved me? A man who was once so arrogant and noble actually asked such a vulgar question. Through the howling wind and the falling snow, I turned to look at him, blinked vigorously. I know he is mean, cold, selfish, but I can't deny that he participated in all the major changes in my life. From a barmaker with only a high school degree to an undergraduate college student who graduated from a prestigious school. From damp basements to bright Riverview flats. From cowardice and inferiority to bravery and gentleness. From a girl to an adult. Once I came to Kyoto alone, I had to resist everything. Later, his simple and contemptuous, "What's wrong?" could settle all the troubles for me. The name Mike has been engraved in my bones and blood for a long time. He changed my life and allowed me to struggle out of the mud and see the wider world. He also gave me the confidence to know that as long as I say his name, no one dares to bully me. At the same time, he also taught me the most painful lesson, making me understand that love like moths to a flame is fruitless. At the age of 20, I used him as a cliché metaphor for the light that redeemed me. At the age of 30, I still say this when I stand here. Mike was the light that changed my life. But I know better that this light has never been my destination. So, when his white moonlight came back, I chose to give way without hesitation. I hope that the light that dragged me out of the quagmire can also embrace the light that he's been waiting for so many years. Although it messed up in the end. But it's not my fault. That's when I touched the velvet box in my pocket. I don't know when he stuffed it in. I didn't even watch it. Throw the box directly into his snow. Up to now, love or not is a meaningless question. I am no longer the girl who needs to be attached to other people's light to survive. The house was lit with warm lights. My husband, Jack, is cooking for me. I walk step by step towards my spring. End of text. Extra. Mike's perspective. 1. The first time I met Lily was in a bright nightclub. I don't like to talk about business on such occasions. It's too noisy and noisy. But since it is a warm invitation from the partner, then I have no reason to refute people's space. She was about 20 years old that year, but she was already a veteran of the night scene. Wearing the most revealing skirt, with beautiful makeup, she is handy to please guests. Obviously, her face is so beautiful and delicate, but her eyes are a pair of round almond eyes, and she will have dimples when she smiles. That was the first time I remembered Sarah after a few years. Two people who were different from each other. But I saw the similarities the moment she poured the wine. She was very good at drinking, her voice was soft, and her speech was sweet, which made the bosses laugh. Even in such a high-end night scene full of beauties, she is also eye-catching enough. So I remember her, too. At that time, my company was in a period of transition, and there were many drinking parties every day. I like wine tasting, but I don't like meaningless, pouring wine into my stomach like drinking water. Most of the female companions around me were overwhelmed by alcohol, so I naturally thought of her. 30,000 at a time, give me a drink. That's a lot more than she earns at night shows, so she's working hard. No matter what kind of wine is on the wine table, you can pour it into your mouth when you pick it up. Other female companions may be drunk and tilt, or they may rub against me through drunkenness. But she would only sit next to me with her crimson cheeks and shining eyes. Won't touch me very good. The things chatted at the wine table were very boring, so she would often wander and stare at the wine in front of her in a daze, but occasionally when someone teased her, she would smile and show a shy look. Not boring. So every time I have a drinking party, I think of her first. Later, she stayed with me for a long time. I frowned imperceptibly, and she could tell what was going on in my heart. Often I get bored talking, my patience is about to run out, and it's not good to leave directly. She would hug my neck, make a comprehensible move, and make a fuss about leaving. She was very to my liking. So I'm also willing to help her solve some troubles. These include the debt-collecting underworld, the difficult customers in the nightclub, and the damp and cramped basement. Later, she told me through drunkenness. I am her light and salvation. I think it's funny. Salvation should be willing, and nothing else to ask for. Instead of a mercenary businessman like me. 3. I have always had a lot of female companions around me. Some are cooperative needs, and some are arranged contact at home. But most of them do not exceed 3 months. Even I found it strange that I could allow her to stay with me for so long. Of course, there were many unpleasant glances at her. After she leaves the night show, she will take on some small web dramas from time to time to earn some pocket money. At that time, when I came back from a business trip to Europe, she was in a state of blue and purple again. I heard that when it was her turn, Weya happened to malfunction. I sneered. I was calculated so many times in a month. She was quite patient, and she took the initiative to come and serve me regardless of her injuries. She kept biting her lip and not letting herself moan. After only a while, I lost interest. I simply lit a cigarette and asked her to accompany me to a dinner tomorrow. She has only accompanied me to the wine bureau, so those people rightfully regarded her as a plaything that was summoned. It wasn't until she carried me into the high-standard dinner party as a female companion that everyone's shameless thoughts gradually stopped. After dealing with those who stumbled her up, I told her lightly, "In my name, you can be presumptuous, otherwise you will smash my face." She hugged me and said yes, leaning over to kiss me with red cheeks. I don't resist kissing. Occasionally, when she was sick and uncomfortable, he was willing to take her into his arms and kiss her. At first, it was just a shallow peck, but later I preferred deep kissing. Taking away her last breath of oxygen, she looked at her almond eyes with tears and blushed. But he could only cling to my neck and whimper and beg me with the softest expression. 4. I rightfully put her in my territory and made it mine. So when I first saw the low-cost web drama, she kissed the male lead. A subtle displeasure rose in my heart. I don't want to admit that I was jealousy. I just hate it. I hate that my things smell like other people. In my opinion. Possessiveness is an instinct engraved in the bones of males, not a manifestation of emotions. She probably knew that I was unhappy. So I didn't take on any more intimate scenes after that. She has always done a good job of this. She is very well behaved and obedient from beginning to end. The only thing that has disobeyed me is that one thing. The child she had unexpectedly conceived and intended to keep behind. I never thought she would be so bold. So I threw her into the snow and reflected on it so that she could think it through before coming in. I didn't close the villa door that night, but she stayed up all night. I thought she was going to me. But the next day she stared into her red eyes and unexpectedly compromised. At that time, my friends were all persuading me, just a child, can I use such a big fight? There are a lot of dirty things in the circle, and several well-known bigwigs also have a few illegitimate children hidden abroad. But I just think it's troublesome and unnecessary. In order to inherit the family property logically, I fought with the illegitimate children under my father for several years. I hate their identity, so I will never allow myself to have such a child. Someone jokingly asked, then why don't you marry Lily? This is not considered an illegitimate child. People have been with you for 6 years. This is the first woman to have been with you for so long, Mike. Do you dare to say that you were not tempted at all? I didn't speak, but I felt funny in my heart. It's just that I raised it for 2 more years. but time has become the criterion for them to judge whether they are tempted or not. So in the 7th year, I decided to separate from her. 5. My family chose a suitable marriage partner for me. If there are no accidents, I will enter the marriage hall with someone who is the right person who can help me. But on the eve of the wedding, the rich daughter ran away from marriage in order to chase your love. I find it ridiculous, but at the same time I feel relaxed. I never give a woman a second chance to stick my label, but I gave Lily twice. The first time was when she had just aborted the child and was lying on the hospital bed with a pale face, but she pulled a smile at me. At that time, I thought that she had learned the lesson she deserved, and I could reluctantly forgive her. So I allowed her to stay with me for another year. The second time is now. In the 6 months of disconnection, I spent 3 months preparing for the wedding, and I thought of her for 3 months without reason. But I would never take the initiative to find her. Later, I accidentally saw her in a restaurant. She was on a blind date with the man in front of her, smiling and talking about her vision for the future. I looked at it calmly and quietly, but didn't step forward. Later, when I lay in bed for several nights, I would think of her dazzling, smiling face, and the boredom in my chest was blocked for many days. I have never been a person who is extremely myself. Facing desire is the first truth I learned when I entered the business world. So I asked my assistant to call her and ask her to come over. She rarely comes to me. After a hearty lingering, I came out of the shower and saw her rubbing the body lotion she had brought. The rich scent of roses filled my deserted bedroom. I lit a cigarette and lazily leaned on the terrace to look at her. Her long hair is soft, her skin is white, her waist is slender, and she is so delicate that she wants to drip. She was also wearing the necklace I picked for her around her neck, and she was wearing a bathrobe that matched my suit. This is a rose that I cultivated with my own hands. Secret possessiveness grew from my chest. I am finally willing to admit that I am jealous. She can only belong to me. When she was about to put things back in her bag, I extinguished the cigarette, walked over and kissed her and said casually, "Let it go." For the first time, the bottles and jars that belonged to her fell on my black wooden table. For the first time in 7 years, I acquiesced to her stepping into my life. 6. After that, we started the next year tacitly. I no longer had any other female companions by my side, and she was the only one left by my side. Even my group of cynical brothers couldn't help but joke about when they would be able to drink my wedding wine. I sneered coldly and ignored them. I can continue to raise him, but I won't marry her. I said, I am a businessman who puts profit first. If I had to say that there was a moment when I really thought about this question, it was probably the Mid-Autumn Festival of a certain year. At 12 o'clock sharp, I felt that the bed was empty. I got up and looked around to find that she was nibbling bread in the living room on the first floor. I was a little embarrassed after I found out and asked me if I wanted to eat some too. It's hard for me to describe my mood at that time, probably because I was amused and helpless, and the mask that was usually cold and indifferent melted in half. I went into the kitchen and cooked her pasta. The last time I cooked was when I was studying abroad. Although it has been so long and the feel is slightly rusty, the finished product is satisfactory. The living room is spacious and quiet, with heavy traffic outside. The shadowy wall lamp fell gently on her hair, pulling out her slender white neck and hiding the ambiguous hickey on her chest. Suddenly fireworks exploded outside. She raised her eyes with a smile and said to me, "Mike, happy Mid-Autumn Festival." It is at this moment I suddenly had the idea that it would be good to live like this. 7. But our relationship stopped at the 10th year. A girl who was about to disappear in my memory has returned. Everyone said she was my white moonlight. I don't deny it. In the 2 years of high school, she was indeed by my side and gave me some faith to persevere. The night Lily was sent away, the night Sarah landed. I was thinking at that time, she followed me for 10 years. Whatever she wants, I think I'll agree. But she just smiled, even though her tears kept falling. She was so sad that she told me, "I don't want anything. I just want Mike to be really happy." If you hear such a stupid thing at the wine party, I will definitely laugh a few words. As a lover who has been adopted, when he can make a lot of money, he suddenly has no desire, either pretending to be high or fishing for big fish. But I clearly felt the unknown emotions in my heart. After sending Lily away, my place was naturally taken by Sarah. She often talked to me about high school. In fact, it seems that the time of acquaintance is only 2 years. But she always has a lot of bits and pieces. In fact, I am already a little vague about that memory, but I remember that I liked her. After she left, maybe I was heartbroken at the time, but now I didn't feel anything when I looked at her. Because I promised to celebrate her birthday when I was young. So I went in the kitchen and gave her noodles. She gathered around me and said in a coquettish tone, "Am I the first person to eat the noodles you made?" I don't understand why women always struggle with things like the first time. Just as I don't know how to hear the answer to the question of wanting to hear. Am I the first to shave you? Am I the first person to enter your bedroom? Am I the first person to sit in your co-pilot? No. In fact, for the first time, there are other people. She has a lot of problems and is annoying. It's been more than 10 years, Sarah. I reminded her calmly. She blinked, her eyes reddened, and she said in a relaxed tone, "I know, it has been so long. I have reached a third of the way in my life. I have had a long 10 years with other women. How could I only remember the 2 years of high school? When I was young, I promised to marry her. But now, I'm not sure." 8. Every now and then I think of Lily. She is alone abroad and can't cook, so I don't know if she can get used to it. But I left her a lot of money. It should be enough for her to find an aunt who cooks. I don't know why I think of her so often. I blame this on habit, a normal withdrawal reaction. I definitely won't take the initiative to find her, because I don't give a woman a third chance to stick on me. She has been with me for 10 years, long enough. 3 months later, I got on a plane to London because of my cooperation. I thought I might run into her, but I didn't necessarily think about meeting her. Until I stood in the floor-to-ceiling window, my eyes falling. Seeing her slightly bulging abdomen, she came out of the hospital while flipping through the prenatal examination report. At that moment, I laughed angrily. 10 years have passed, and I still haven't been able to make her fully understand my rules. Children are always the stupidest and most greedy means. Perhaps the lessons of that year were not deep enough. Only then did she think she could do it again with the same means. I mockingly threw a card to Tom and asked him to take the talk. "You contact her unilaterally, don't give her any of my contact information, and when she asks, she says I'm getting married." I want to use the excuse of marriage to cut off all her thoughts. I didn't want to give her a chance to reconnect with me and think that she would still be able to reconcile with me. I have always been merciless in severing old things. I was standing in front of the window watching London's first snowfall of the year and watching her reaction. But her face was calm throughout, not panicked and not pale. This was not what I expected. She should. At least there should be a hint of panic. After all, she knows best what I am taboo about. This time, no matter how obsessed she was with the child she aborted back then, and how she interceded with me, I would not be soft-hearted. The tragic consequences of that time were not my intention. But rules are rules. If she violates it, she must bear it. And this time too. 9. Tom brought me back a reply. She said it was her and her husband's child. Husband. The word was like a tiny thorn that pierced my eardrum. I think it's ridiculous. She is really getting more and more comfortable making up lies now. The inexplicable restlessness in my heart turned into something more melancholic. Later met her in the hospital. I couldn't help but be sarcastic. But she was always gentle and peaceful and looked at me with her misty eyes, asking me, Mike, why don't you believe me? Should I trust her? But I don't deny it. When I saw her tears, I compromised. I can wait for the results of the report to come out and then nail her to the pillar of shame so that she can no longer have an excuse to refute. Because I am sure that the child is mine. The last time I had sex that night, I didn't wear a condom. She was so tired that she slept until after 10 o'clock, and after meeting with Sarah, she hurried to catch the plane. Whether it is inferred from time or motive, I take it for granted that this child is mine. So when Sarah sent me the report showing the parent-child relationship, my pent-up anger finally found a more direct outlet. I want to see how much more she can quibble. I calmed her down with ice water. I have never been soft on teaching disobedient people, but when she raised her head, tears slipped down with ice water and looked at me with that broken and stubborn look. When I counted the past one by one, I asked her with red eyes why I did this to her. My fingertips on the wall of the cup were slightly numb. Because every word and every sentence of her is irrefutable to me. During the years she has been by my side, she has always been very well behaved and obedient, so that people can't make mistakes. The only thing that is not good is the secret pregnancy. Her trembling voice dragged my reason back. An unfamiliar, guilt-like emotion passed by quickly. She asked me, "It is a matter that can be solved with an appraisal report. Why was she forced into such a situation where it was difficult to prove herself?" My eyes fell on the tips of her soaked hair and pale face, as if a fine needle had pierced my heart, making it difficult for me to breathe. I rarely give people a second chance, but I always make exceptions for her. 10. I changed my assistant and asked him to bring me a second paternity test report. He said in a happy, joyful tone, "Mike, the child is not yours." He was waiting for my reply, but he only saw my stunned figure. He tentatively put the report in my hands. Outside the window is the gray sky of London. I stared at the big words over and over again, and the knuckles holding the report turned slightly white due to the force. Not mine. This perception is like cold air. It envelopes me from all sides with an extreme, icy silence. So, she left for 3 months, quickly got married, and became pregnant with someone else's child. An indescribable taste spread in the mouth. Bitter, ridiculous, and with a bit of sharp pain. It turned out that she could really turn around like this. Towards a life without me, and even give birth to a new life that has nothing to do with me. So what are my anger, suspicion, and irritability and loss of control that even I can't understand? A downright and cellmate joke? I suddenly remembered the child I had asked to abort. That day, for me child. I suddenly felt a dull and sharp pain in my heart. My hand holding the cigarette trembled slightly. I thought I had always been a very calm person, and I began to organize my thoughts. Why didn't I want it at that time? Because of the trouble? Because of the rules? Because you think she is not qualified enough? Or is it because he is convinced that he will only have justifiable heirs in the future? I was in the business world when I was 20 years old, and I rarely made bad decisions. But I actually felt a hint of contrition about this incident. All my thoughts were disturbed by the report in front of me. She already has children from other men. She was so determined to protect another man's child. This contrast, this gap, it made me feel like I was in my throat, almost suffocating. I finally realized. I felt like I had lost her. Not when she left me 3 months ago to fly to a foreign country, but at some point earlier when I ordered her to abort the child. 11. Under the pretext of apology, we met for the last time. I set the location at the restaurant where the incident occurred and deliberately chose a window seat. Outside the window was the calm and hazy sky in London, gray and overwhelming. She was obviously pregnant and had a good complexion, blocking my hand to pour her wine. It's fruit wine, the degree is not high. I tried to make the tone sound natural, like an explanation and like a pale justification for my decade. But she told me that she didn't like to drink. This is the answer I didn't expect. My voice was difficult, and I wanted to ask her why she didn't tell me. But I remembered that she stayed by my side with such a glass of wine. And these were never up to her to choose. When she went to the bathroom, I put the ring I bought at the auction at a high price into her coat pocket. I thought that's what I owe her. That meal was tasteless. At the end, I insisted on sending her off. The snow began to fall again, not big, but fine and dense, soaking my shoulders. We walked in silence on the road where I had followed her. This time, I know, this is the end of our decade. The question that had been lingering in my heart for a long time, which I thought I would never ask, and which was so cliché and so fatal, still popped out of my mouth. Lily, have you ever loved me? In fact, as soon as the words were spoken, I regretted it. It's not like me. This is too ugly, too humble. But I stared at her again, my heart as if it was hanging in midair. She did not answer immediately, and the short silence seemed to be a century. I watched as she reached out the velvet box in her pocket. I didn't look at it, and without hesitation, I threw it back into the snow in front of me. Simply and decisively, without the slightest nostalgia. The answer is self-evident. I didn't understand why people use such a vulgar thing as red roses to describe a person who couldn't be loved. Until I was on the snowy street, watching the red roses being bought by a man. With red eyes and white knuckles, I threw the box with the ring out forcefully. I think I will probably never have children again in my life.